Let's do it here. Another edition of Goz On The Go. Everything you need to know in the sports world. Sports talk, the classic way we do it. In just 30 minutes. Driving to work, everything you need. Goz On The Go right here, your sports cheat sheet for the week. Before we get things underway, though, let's give a little bit of love to our pals over at the Across the Street Pub right there on Western Ave. Shout out to Greg. Shout out to Danny, the entire crew there at Across the Street Pub. If you're looking for a spot to play some sports trivia, I am there all summer long. So Thursday night, look at that. Thursday night, if you're listening to this, it's probably Thursday morning, afternoon, whatever it is. Thursday nights throughout the summer, we're playing trivia. Now, I mentioned sports. That's one round. Movies, television, a little mix of everything. Music, movies, TV, sports, mix of everything. 5 rounds, winners at halftime overall at the end of the night. 7 o'clock. That's when we get things underway at Across the Street Pub. Go in there and enjoy the food, have a few drinks, say hello to everybody. Always great food. I go with the Hero, a.k.a. the Gyro. I know Greg's going to get mad at me for that pronunciation, but that's okay. That's my go-to when I go to the Across the Street Pub. Come join me this summer, 7 to 8:30 for your chance to win some awesome prizes and play some sports trivia. Looking forward to partnering with them via Godzilla Media. Happy to have those guys on board for this summer. So join me again. Across the Street Pub, Thursday nights here throughout the summer. We'll be hanging out and having some fun. Now, let's do it. Let's get into this week's edition of Goz On The Go. I despise Kyrie Irving. I can't stand him. Last week, I tried to, and maybe I made a mistake last week. I didn't get into the water bottle throwing at Kyrie from the Boston fans and what he had to say and him stomping on the Lucky the mascot. I had too many other things that I didn't want to basically ruin it for myself and get all worked up about Kyrie, but I can't do that anymore. I have to lead off this week's podcast talking about Kyrie Irving. I've thought about this. It's 31 years as a sports fan. I can't find an athlete I despise more than Kyrie Irving. If you know me growing up in central New York, the things I couldn't stand as a sports fan, I didn't like Tennessee football because they robbed my boy McNabb. It's hard now watching that pass interference call. It looked a lot different when I was up in legit the last row in section 303, row double Z, that maybe he got a little bit more contact. But because of that, as a kid, they kick a game-winning field goal. They go on to win the national championship and everything else. And they ruined my guy McNabb and Syracuse and all that stuff. But I didn't like Tennessee, didn't like UConn, Georgetown. You kind of have an idea of the teams I didn't like growing up as a kid, knowing my teams that I liked. Kyrie Irving has surpassed everybody. Because if you don't remember, we got Kyrie stomping on the logo after Game 4. We got Kyrie kind of alluding to the fact that Boston fans, even though he played in that city, are going to be racist to him when he takes the court and is an opposing player. Like, what does Kyrie want to do? Honestly, does he want to be embraced? Does he want to be a philosopher? Does he want to be somebody who changes the world? That's my favorite part about him and Kevin Durant. I'm sarcastic when I'm saying that anytime they face criticism, it's never their fault. Anytime they do something dumb on the court, they try to twist it around. Kyrie's out there doing things that he should be getting booed for. When you stop on the logo, and don't make it about a cartoon, everything. No. It is an act of I'm trying to get under the skin of both players and fans in the opposing city. That's why he did it. When you get the reaction that you did, that's what happens. Oh, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just an innocent bystander. It's not the case. When you act like you don't care about basketball and you wonder why a basketball fan doesn't really appreciate your skill set, that's why. You're trying to devalue your own product. It doesn't make any sense. Remember Billy Mays? Remember that guy who used to be out there pitching stuff all the time on television? Imagine if Billy Mays got out there and said, look, I know I'm here to talk about this amazing blender. Can we talk about something else? Can we talk about what's going on in Europe? We'd be like, what about the blender? Like, there's a lot of showmanship and sales what goes into being a part of how to help out your product. And that's just not sports. That's anything. But for whatever reason, Kyrie, who is, by the way, an executive when it comes to the promotion of the NBA, doesn't want to have help with that because he wants to kind of send the attention away from the game. So now I got somebody who doesn't really care about the NBA, doesn't really care about basketball, the guy who wanted to shut it down last season, who's stomping on logos, who's calling out the former fans that cheered for him racist. But what do they go out and do? They bury the Bucs. And if you listen to a podcast a few weeks ago, I told you the Nets are going to win the NBA championship. I don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to be exciting? Are we going to care? Are they going to get the trophy and just walk off the court and say we don't care about this? Durant, who I didn't think I was going to get into in this rant, but Kevin Durant going at Jay Williams because he got offended because he compared his game to Giannis Antetokounmpo. This might be one of many times I say this in this podcast. Who the hell cares? Like, how can you be that sensitive with these guys? I didn't like James Harden's style of play, but if you told me, guys, who do you like of the big three the most of Durant, Kyrie, and Harden? I like Harden. I can't believe I'm saying that. I think I kind of liked Harden when he got fat. I thought it was funny. I wish he got fatter. That's what Levac and I used to say. We wanted Harden to be much fatter going out there. Could have looked like Khalid Al-Amin or a kid with a t-shirt in a pool. That's what I wanted to see Harden do. For the comedy effect alone, I thought that was good. I can't stand Kyrie. I root against the Nets every single time. I've been saying this since this team got formed. But they're so good. I want them to lose. I want them to lose badly. But I've never truly seen, covered, heard an athlete like this in my lifetime, who is talented, no doubt, but goes at fans, tries to get a reaction out of people. And I truly believe at times he tries to do that just to be the contrarian in the conversation and say that he's different, and then wonders why people don't react the way that they do. I'm not saying throw water bottles at Kyrie. I'm not. No. Don't be an idiot in the crowd. But Kyrie, when you're doing these things to bring attention to yourself, when you're trying to call out people for being racist, even though they lacked an example of him personally from the reports that I read, that's why people are going at you. That's why you're not being embraced. When Kevin Durant is calling out an ESPN personality for giving him a compliment, but then complaining that he didn't want his game compared to some, they haven't made it any easier to root for this Brooklyn Net team. And as bad as it sounds, I don't know who's going to stop him. My guy Bryce over in the Sports with the Z and a T podcast believes in his Sixers. I don't see it. And unfortunately, we're probably going to see Kyrie lifting up a championship. And you can hear me probably all the way from wherever you're listening to this booing and my heart hurting that he is going to win another championship. It's been a rough week for Garrett Cole, huh, Yankee fans? Yikes. So if you haven't heard, Garrett Cole was asked because of a situation involving Josh Donaldson, a former American League MVP, about this tactic that had been, I think pun intended there, tactic that had been used by pitchers across Major League Baseball for spin rate. Spider tack, something you put on your fingers. I know some weightlifters have maybe used that in the past as well to increase their spin rate. And as Josh Donaldson had noted already just a few hours ago, that a lot of times since then, he actually noted 12 pitcher spin rates have decreased since his comments about Spider Tack to come out. If you don't know exactly what we're talking about, let's set up the question here. Garrett Cole was asked by a member of the media about Josh Donaldson's comments about Spider Tack, and the question was, has he ever used Spider Tack?
Yeah, I mean, I was made aware of it this week. Obviously, you know, it's undesirable, but I understand this topic is important, to everybody that cares about the game. And in regards to Josh specifically, I kind of felt it was a bit of low-hanging fruit, but he's entitled to his opinion and, to voice his opinion. So I have issues, not issues. I just have other things that I need to, keep my focus on. So respectfully, I can't worry about that type of stuff, but I would say that, as a member of the executive council, in the union, and part of my job, part of my role there is to facilitate communication about really all things involving the game. And, I'm open to doing that. That's part of my role. So if anyone has a concern regarding anything, we're always available to reach out and talk to if there needs to be some clarification and whatnot.
Ooh, buddy. Yay. That's what we call a yes or no. Okay. Yes or no question. If you say, no, I've never used it, you're in the clear. Any other answer besides no, you're in trouble. That dance around, I think Jeff Passan at ESPN said it best. For a yes or a no question, anything else that is not a no is a yes. And that's what happened there. He got caught. He got busted. But for me, and I wonder if it's the era in which I grew up in, is it strange that I don't really care about this story? And I know it's weird having that opinion coming off a Kyrie story, but hear me out here. Look, I'm somebody who grew up in the PED era. And everybody was juicing. From McGuire to Sosa to A-Rod to Bonds, we all figured it out. But what I always found strange about the PED era is that they didn't test for a long time. So it was legal. There was nothing in the rules that said they couldn't do it. But once we didn't like that they were doing it, we wanted to change the rules. Well, just make it a rule then. Okay, you can't do this. Okay, fine. We can't do that. I don't think it's Garrett Cole's fault. I don't think it's baseball's fault. If anything, I truly feel like this is a media story. And I can hear the boos come, boo, Goz, media boy. No, it's baseball. It's boring. It's dumb. It's slow. Nobody hits. People always want to trash on baseball. But what happens, and you have to believe me on this, it's a 162-game regular season. It is hard for these writers and these sports talk radio hosts and these guys to find content to make these games matter day in and day out. If you're in a market like St. Louis, Kansas City, times in New York, because New York is definitely a baseball popular area and more, Boston, you got to have things to talk about. How are you going to fill 3, 4, 5 hours of content in a dog days of the summer? These are the things that get people to react and respond and have emotion, some of the classic sports talk conversations. And I say the media because of this. You know this happens in other sports, right? Where a team uses a tactic, the other teams don't like it. The rules are changed because of that. But the team isn't looked at differently when that rule was intact. Now, I know that got a little wordy. Let's kind of back up a little bit to explain. Let's go back to like the footballs of the early 2000s. And I'm talking about both college and pro. That's why you said footballs, because some of the rules had been altered in both of those sports. And the most in particular was the Patriots-Colts 5-yard bump. Some older football fans know what I'm talking about. The 5-yard bump, you go back and watch those Patriot games, Marvin Harrison is getting buried by Ty Law, just crushed. And Harrison can't get off the line, and they outlawed the 5-yard bump. So are people going to look at the Patriots and say, oh, can you believe what they were doing? They were bumping the wide receiver. That's not fair. They could. Like, it wasn't a rule that they couldn't do that. Imagine we did this in the NBA, right? Oh, can you believe that? Steph Curry launching up those 3-pointers and knocking them down. Now they made him a rule. That wasn't a rule back in the 1950s and 60s. He shouldn't be doing that. Huh? Wait, no. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to shoot 3-pointers. When there's no rule that's in place in some of these sports that you can't use sputter tack, you can't use PEDs, you can't bump the receiver for 5 yards. I can give you a few more examples, but again, it is Goz On The Go. I could write a whole research paper about this. When a rule is intact that you have to follow, then you follow those rules. When a sport changes certain things, that now becomes a part of the game. We've seen that in basketball. Nobody complains about Steph Curry shooting threes and what it's done for the legacy of the NBA. That doesn't happen when we talk about basketball. Nobody complains about what the legacy is of Ty Law, who's a Hall of Famer, because he had a 5-yard bump against the Colts. How about Mean Joe Green? All these other defensive linemen who used a head slap. You can't head slap. You can't horse collar tackle. Look at some of LT, Lawrence Taylor's tackles. We're not going through some of these guys' records and saying, well, those tackles are illegal, so they're not a good player anymore. It was within the rules. Now, someone at Tom Goz, TOMGOZZ, on Twitter, Goz at GodzillaMedia.com. You could say, Goz, hang on, who? You can't use a foreign substance while pitching. Yep, we've seen it with Michael Pineda and others, the pine tar stuff. Like, look, we've seen that stuff. You can't use a foreign substance. But where are the rules? How are they not getting caught? I'm not, again, I got to come off the Kyrie thing. I'm not saying cheat as much as you can and get away with it, kids. Nothing says Goz On The Go and getting there with Goz. Podcasts, especially, that are trying to educate the young, especially getting there with Goz. And he flips it around at Goz On The Go and says, cheat as much as you can. No, I'm not saying that. But lay it out nice and clear for everybody, all right? Hey, here's what you cannot use. I don't care if the umpire checks the pitcher before every inning. He's got to throw warm-up pitches before every inning. I watch the UFC and boxing all the time. The UFC does this, and it's hysterical. When the UFC fighter steps a few feet away from the octagon before they actually get in, the officials check them like they have weapons. So you're telling me what? The UFC fighter is going to sneak in a weapon? They're checking their gloves. They're checking everything. So we can do that before professional fights. I don't care if they do that to every single pitcher who comes out of the dugout. Have one of the umpires at first base who's not doing anything check the pitcher every single time. There you go. It's fixed. Until they put in rules like that, We can't change our ways in which we think of these guys, and I know traditional baseball person wants to, but just make it a rule. Until it's not a rule, and that's on baseball. Baseball's going to make sure we know exactly what they're doing and what the clear-cut rules are before some of these guys get accused of cheating, even though they're not cheating. Who's smarter, Floyd Mayweather Jr. or the Paul brothers? I've been thinking about that all weekend. If you're watching on our visual side, hey, look at a young me interviewing Floyd Mayweather Jr. It's way back when in the Turning Stone Casino. But that might be 2014, that pick. March. My God, I'm getting old. Well, Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul, Jake Paul, at one point, probably when I get worked up in this story, I might confuse the Paul brothers, but I believe it is Logan Paul who fought Floyd Mayweather, and it was. He's going to make about $10 million is what some reports are saying about that 8-round exhibition, no judge, no winner declared fight. It's worth repeating. That's right. Mayweather and Paul fought under the conditions that no winner would be named. No judges would be used. Shout out to my guy Kyle Ray, who's on the We Talk Fantasy podcast here on Goz On The Go. He goes, guys, I don't wager on sports. Not my thing. I'm going to bet on Logan Paul to knock out Floyd Mayweather. And I think he just wanted to see the odds. I think he just wanted to see, okay, I'm going to take a long shot and see what happens. He couldn't wager on the fight because of a lot of those things I just said. But what Logan Paul has done, and his brother, and why I believe they are smarter than Floyd Mayweather, is they figured out how to make that money. Technology caught up. We talked about this a few weeks ago when Paul's brother was fighting. These guys know how to do it. Okay, here's what we're doing. My brother's going to fight Ben Askren. He's going to knock him out. People are going to use Triller. They're going to pay. We're going to get a profit. That's all it is. Fight sports are. Two guys get in a ring. They fight each other, whether it's Billy Football and Jose Canseco on Rough and Rowdy for Barstool, whatever website you want to use. Hey, we're going to put them inside a ring. They're going to fight. People are going to pay for it. We make money. There you go. There's the UFC. There's boxing. And notice how I said the UFC, because boxing and their federations are all scattered all over the place and everything else. You could say, and I think it was my guy, I'm just giving a lot of shout outs on this week's episode, but it's been interesting. A lot of these guys covered these topics, especially my guy Kyle over on the Trav and Rigney show. Rigney said this. He's like, boxing's irrelevant. Well, maybe not that far. Because what boxing has struggled with over the last 10 to 15 years is have those big-time fights happen. We waited so long for Pacquiao, Mayweather. We're going to wait for Fury and Joshua. We're going to get Wilder versus Fury a third time. These guys say, all right, we're going to fight each other. If they're entertained and people buy it, that's what matters the most in this sport. And the Paul brothers figured it out and made that cash. Now, why it's not Mayweather is because how long is he going to do this? Like, did people look at the legacy of Floyd Mayweather and thought, wow, you know, he's 50-0. He's fought all these great competitors. But those McGregor fights and those Paul fights, that's when I thought he was one of the greats of all time. Legacy is going to be altered for some. And if you're not a Floyd Mayweather fan, you probably don't care anyways. But the Paul brothers said, we're going to become YouTube stars. And we think the best way for us to make money is seeing if people will pay to watch us maybe get beat up. And they figured it out. There's going to be another Logan Paul. There's going to be another Jake Paul. Other athletes, and I use that term a little lightly there. Well, if you're a professional athlete, you're getting paid to play sports. So these guys are athletes, are going to continue to do this. I'm fascinated. And I said this weeks ago here on Goz On The Go. I am fascinated about what the history of boxing is going to be when we look 20 to 30 years from now. I mean, history in the sense of, are fans going to be more interested in these fights than professionally trained boxers? And that's who I'm going to feel for. These boxers who busted their butt for 5, 10, 15 years to get that big primetime fight, and people are vying YouTube and celebrities and ex-athletes and everything else fights before them. Somebody's got to break through. Somebody's got to be that full-on entertainer. That's why I told you I love Tyson Fury. If you could entertain and have people feel something, whether it's an excitement to cheer for you and an anger to boo for you, that's how you get people invested. And that is boxing, and that is the fight game to the core. And the Paul brothers figured it out and cashed in. Good for them. Mayweather knocked him out. Who cares? He stood up, finished. He's getting his $10 million and he's walking out. Shout out to him, man. He figured out the game. Julio Jones is now a Tennessee Titan. Whoa, what a move for the Titans, an AFC South team that continues to compete for a Super Bowl. 2 seasons removed from an AFC title game appearance against the Kansas City Chiefs. And a lot of people looked at that Titan team, and you probably just heard that. You're like, wait a second, wait, they were? Yeah, that same Titan team that took down the New England Patriots, and Tom Brady played his final game as a Patriot. Titans knocked him off. That same Titan franchise that took down the top-seeded Baltimore Ravens and slowed down Lamar Jackson. Oh, and that same Titan franchise that had a double-digit lead against the Kansas City Chiefs in that 2019 AFC title game. They have gotten better on offense. You've got A.J. Brown and now the single-digit rocking the deuce Julio Jones. You've got a 2,000-yard rusher in Derrick Henry. You've got Ryan Tannehill, who, although his career and how we view him, fantasy football players in particular, how do you evaluate Tannehill with his weapons? He is having a career change, a monster contract in Miami and a monster contract in Tennessee, even though he wasn't the most impact player. And he just took a pay cut so they could get Julio Jones. Here's the thing, though, about the Tennessee Titans that maybe right now in June you're not thinking about, but you might more and more as we get closer and closer to week one's kickoff in September. Why can't they win the Super Bowl? Because if I told you what's the best way to beat Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, you would probably say pressure them, right? We've heard it for over a decade plus. Pressure Brady, get in his face. Same with Mahomes. Make it hard, make it difficult. You're not technically wrong. I wouldn't fight you on that argument, but I have a better solution as to how to stop Mahomes and Brady. The Brady thing, every team's trying to do it. He's too good at this point. Mahomes is an athlete. He can get out of the pocket and make plays with his feet. Here's how I think is the best way to stop Mahomes and Brady. Keep them off the field. Just flat out don't let him get under center. And you know what that means. Time of possession. Eat up the clock. Mike Vrabel showed it in that playoff game in 2019. He is a great clock and game manager. Remember, he out-Belichicked Belichick by running time off the clock in a punt situation and taking penalties and all this stuff. Vrabel knows how to run the clock. You got Derrick Henry in the backfield. Even if you're not a Tannehill fan, tip your cap and say he can still move as that former college wide receiver and get first downs. And Julio Jones, one more fantasy reference here. You know he's not a touchdown grabber, but he can move the change. He's going to probably finish his career as a top 7 all-time yardage guy in the NFL. And A.J. Brown is a stud. So if the Titans can dominate on offense, they've made some additions to the defense, maybe not good enough, and those fans in Tennessee know how bad that defense was. You just got to own the clock. Bills fans, I didn't forget about you. Josh Allen's in that mix too, but Buffalo fan doesn't really look at Tennessee as a big-time threat. Buffalo fan probably would want Tennessee because their defense and offense is solid across the board. That's a nice matchup for the Bills. The Bills are a better version of Tennessee. However, if the Titans get it right, and Ryan Tannehill is the difference, and the defense can just make some plays, that offense is the best offense in the NFL. Who else would you rather have? An all-pro wide receiver? How about another all-pro wide receiver? Arguably the best running back in the NFL and a quarterback who's hopefully not going to blow you the game and a coach that continues to impress. The Titans get the Chiefs. Titans get the Bucs in the Super Bowl. And while we're recording this, I'm wearing my Buccaneers shirt. Those are great matchups for them. Ravens the same way. Keep Lamar Jackson off the field. I already told you they beat him before. Cleveland's a tough matchup because Cleveland's going to have a really good offensive line. Baker, Odell, Jarvis, Chubb, and Hunt. That's basically Tennessee. The Titans defense has to step up because the Browns defense is better than that. But that weapon of Jones getting added to the mix, they can beat the Chiefs. They can beat the Bucs. And it comes down to that defense to make plays against the Bills and the Browns. Mike Vrabel can coach him up. Tennessee is that close to being a Super Bowl winning franchise as soon as this February. This happens so often in 2021, and I know it happens to you too, whether it's entertainment, sports, you see a headline to a story and you get all worked up, like, no, that's not it, that's not right. Probably even reading these tweets and Facebook and social media posts about my opinions on some of these topics, you may have gotten worked up or disagreed with me without even hearing my take. That's classic. And look, that's how this thing works, right? To get people's attention and everything else. If you're doing it the right way, you have those flashy headlines. I will fully admit, I had that moment this week when I saw the ESPN article that said the college football playoff may expand to 12 teams, and I just saw that headline and thought, oh, God. But I read the details, and I started to learn, and I started to think, and I like it a lot. I can't get enough of it. So here's the layout that's been suggested. You would have 6 conference champions. So you'd have the 5 Power 5 conferences plus the best non-Power 5 team is your 6 automatic qualifiers. And then you'd have 6 at-large teams in the mix. So there you go. Top 4 teams would get a bye. It would be 1 versus 8 across the board. Then they'd reset with 8 again as 4 teams would be eliminated. Those first round games of the 1 versus 8, or however you want to see it, I guess it would be 5 versus 12 in that case. They'd be at home. And then we'd go back to the bowl game scenario after that. Probably not going to cut down on the regular season, and that's a whole different podcast for name, likeness, and image. And I saw the Big Ten. I'm going to stay away from that one for this week's. I know that's probably going to pick up a lot more heat here later in the summer. But I love the idea. And I know what the biggest critic is going to say about it. And I'll say why that critic's going to say that, because it's tradition. It's going to dilute the regular season, guys. Nobody's going to care about these big-time college football regular seasons. The regular season is going to mean nothing. I can't stand that opinion about college football because it's already happening that the regular season doesn't mean anything to some teams. And you're probably hearing that thinking, what are you talking about? Think about a team that would go undefeated and not have a chance to play for a championship. I don't care if you're playing in high school, Pop Warner, Little League, the professional ranks. A team can go undefeated and not win a championship. And yeah, I'm talking about the teams of the past like the Boise States and the TCUs and the Central Floridas. How can you look at half of the country's teams, the MAC, Conference USA, and more of those, we'll call them mid-major conference, and say, hey, you might have an undefeated season, but you will have 0 chance to play for the national championship. How is that good for your sport? How do you tell these guys, hey, you're going to go 10-2, but we're going to give you this as your, hey, 10-2, great season. Here's what we're going to give you guys, an opportunity to play the day after Christmas in Detroit. That doesn't seem like the regular season means much of those teams and programs. 12-team college football playoff. You're telling me I have more competitive games to watch and I can watch the best teams take on the best teams? Why wouldn't you? Now, has COVID-19 potentially sped this up? Has the college football commissioners and athletic directors realized how much money was at stake here? Or do they feel like someone's going to cut into their pie when name, image, and likeness pops up? All those things could be factors, and I believe most of those answers will come over the next few weeks. 8, you could do 6 conference champions and the 2 at-larges. But I like the 12. If you can give me more football, more entertainment, more plays, and more opportunities for some of these lower-seeded teams to go the distance, I'm in. Let's remember the last few years in the college football playoff, we've had some stinkers, right? LSU mopped the floor with Clemson. Some of these semifinal games involving Alabama were not even close. We had monster spreads. Notre Dame's getting smoked a few times by Bama and other teams. They haven't been competitive. How about Florida State getting smacked around by Oregon in that New Year's Day game a couple of years ago at the Rose Bowl? They haven't been as excited. And I know you can pick games and say, what about this one? What about that one? Clemson and Alabama at times are classics with Deshaun Watson. But more football that matters, more teams with an opportunity to win a championship. Why are those bad things? Oh, and commissioners and athletic directors, you could make more money? And the only negative is that you're letting these college athletes maybe play 15 or 16 games. Close what the NFL athletes are playing. I don't know they've expanded for a year. And they still get compensated nothing. Talk about student athletes. Hey, we need you here in July, and you're not going to go home till January. But scholarship's good enough, right? And this is going to be a $1 billion product. That's good too, right? That's an issue. But give me 12 teams. I've now bought in. Reward the teams that are the best in the country with a bye. Let the other teams have an opportunity to play for a chance to win a championship, and the Bulls are still happy. Let's do it. COVID-19 for college football impacted a lot of things, including schools just not wanting to go to bowl games. Now that incentive to keep these bowl games still interesting while keeping the sport more competitive and on people's minds later in the year, all good things. Give me 12 teams in the college football playoff. A little longer version here, Goz On The Go, but I want to make sure I share this story about now the late Coach Jim Fassell. If you follow me on social media, you might have had the chance to see this story. Coach Fassell could not have been a nicer guest with Levac and I back on 104.5 The Team. coach, I believe it was Armin Williams who actually just left me a message. He's out in Houston right now doing the thing out there, programming their stations. I believe Armin was the first to have his number, and it's a question for him of how they were able to connect, but he continued to stay on the show post Armin Levac into Levac and Goz. And this is a compliment. He was truly a football guy. He wanted to talk about the NFL. He wanted to talk about other ranks of professional football. He would have tossed a college question. He loved talking about special teams because of his son bouncing around the league as a special teams coordinator. One of my favorite stories is we are talking to Coach Fassell, who is living in Las Vegas at the time. And Levac goes, "Hey, Coach, I just would love to come over and watch film with you. You know the players, you know football, you know the game. I think I would just be fascinated to watch how you view the game because of all the things you've done." He goes, "Hey, you can do it whenever you want. Come on over. We'll watch football. We'll talk about the tape. We'll talk about the players. I'll teach us a few things. I've seen some things in my day. Come on over." So then the interview wraps. And look, that's a fun answer. You give the host what they want. So interview ends. And Coach Fassell goes, "Hey, so what time you coming?" We're laughing. We're like, "No, for real. Just let me know what time you want to come. You guys got my number. So just shoot me a text. Let me know what time you guys want to stop over. I'll make sure the house is ready. Just let me know what weekend it is. We'll watch the games and have fun." He was serious. He really wanted us to come over and watch football. He was that nice of a guy where a bunch of fools in Albany said they wanted to watch football with him out in Las Vegas. And he said, "Okay, just shoot me a text and come on over." He was the man. Coach Fassell with his epic speech, "This team's going to the playoffs. I'm going all in." My high school coach, Coach Phil Merrill, used that speech for us when we beat Holland Patton in the quarterfinals of the 2007 Class B Section 3 playoffs. Cash in your tickets if you had that reference coming on this week's Goz On The Go. But he used the same thing that Coach Fassell used, the all-in reference. Coach Fassell, you were the man. Rest in peace. Thoughts and prayers to your family. Hopefully your son continues to have a successful NFL coaching career as well. I hope you enjoyed hearing that story about Coach Fassell. And we wrap with our best bet of the week. Gozzy Bear. Hey, that's me. I'm getting hot with this betting stuff. I think it was right when I said fade Goz, and my boys from back home in March were ragging me for how bad my college football and basketball and NFL bets were. The NBA has helped me look good. Horse racing. How about nailing essential quality? I told you he was going to win that race. Now, depending on how you did it, maybe you did my advice and just did the flat bet because he was going to cash in. Maybe I ignored my own advice and won far less than I should have because I just focused on that wheel, hoping for a long shot at 2. Nonetheless, of the last 5 times in an exclusive Goz On The Go episode, we did a futures wager, one that's still pending for some bets. We're 4 or 5. The only one we missed was the Derby. So let's stay hot with this one. And if you know me when it comes to sports betting and sports wagering, I want that ticket to burn if I'm going to lose. You might be confused about exactly what that means. If I told you that a team's going to win the Stanley Cup, the NBA Finals, the Super Bowl, I will not hedge my bet. I will just go and let it burn. And if it's getting close to that thing ending, I will double down and say, okay, if it's going down, I'm going down with you. And I'm talking about the Colorado Avalanche. Shout out to my guy DJ, who, although just barely missed the Sports with a A and Z, Sports with a Z and a T championship for that, and kind of mixed that up because there was a dog involved running around. It even confused me, but nonetheless, he didn't win the t-shirt. He's a huge Avalanche fan. DJ, whether you like my play or not here, I'm riding with your Avalanche to the end. I saw a plus 245 bet out there floating around that is what they're listed at to still win the series. It's 3 games to 2. They're going to play tonight. Again, listening on Thursday if you are. I'm betting on the Avalanche to win the series. I'm betting on the Avalanche still rolling with it. I might even go back and re-wager for them to win the Stanley Cup. And I see them as an underdog against the Vegas Golden Knights at plus 140. All in on the Avalanche. Nathan McKinnon and crew, how good they looked early in the series. Remember, they're down 3 games to 2, but Vegas had to claw in that overtime victory. Don't give up on the Avalanche. If I burn and lose my hot streak with this team, that's fine. But I thought they could do it. They're the best team in the NHL. They were a big favorite early on. I'm going down with the Avalanche. I believe in the comeback. They can do it. Too much talent on that roster. Let's go Avalanche. Pushing the chips, just like Coach Fassell, just like Coach Merrill. I'm all in on Colorado this week. Let's see if the Avalanche can make me look smart. Continue the hot streak here on Goz On The Go. That's it. That's this week's edition. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully, hey, who knows, tonight, whenever you listen to this, you might be with me at across the street pub. I might hang a little bit later and watch some of that Avalanche Golden Knights game with you. Shout out to Dan Duva, by the way. Dan Duva, the broadcaster for the Vegas Golden Knights. Awesome guy. Hopefully in the future, maybe he'll be a guest on Getting There with Goz, because I got a cool story about him. He's a really great guy. He did something for me in my career that not a lot of people know about. So shout out to Dan Duva. Love that dude. Does a great job with the Golden Knights. Join me at Cross Street Pub Thursday nights all throughout the summer. Until then, talk again next week.